But my grandfather owned this place. And he sold this piece of land here to my parents. And they built the house. And there had been a house there years ago, but they cleaned out all the cellar hole and everything else, rebuilt. And of course, it was during the war, and had a hard time getting things, so they put up a little cottage next to the house there, which was supposed to turn into our garage, but never has. And we stayed there while they were working on the big house.
So there was your mom, your dad,
and me.
You.
That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
What was it like being a child on the farm? I guess you had a lot of work.
Yeah, I mean, my job was to always keep the wood box full. I was, 4 years old when we moved up here in 1945. And I had to keep the wood box full, and it was my job to take care of the dog that we had. And, I always liked helping my mother do things, in the house, cooking and things like that. And of course, it wasn't too long before I was in school all day. I used to have a lot of sheep, and I was, raising them for meat and wool. But, I've cut down because nobody wants the wool anymore.
Well, you make things out of the wool, don't you?
Yeah, we do. What I get, from shearing them, we send it and we have it processed and everything so that, we can use it to make hats, mittens, sweaters, socks, whatever. And, but, as far as being able to sell it, when I had 30, 35 head of sheep, we could sell the wool and still keep what we wanted. But, there's very, very few places that will buy it anymore.
Do you know all the goats by name?
Oh, yeah.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
I look at them and I can't tell one from the other.
If you see them every day and you handle them every day, you know who they are.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Do they each have their own personality?
Yes, they do. Some is good, some isn't.
What's your secret to handling them?
Persistence.
You have to be persistent with them?
Yes, you do. You do. You have to be very persistent with them, and they have to learn that they learn when they're young that they're going to do what you want, not what they want to do.
Yeah. What happens when they don't want to do what you want them to do?
We have a fight. And occasionally I'll have to get a little whip and get after them a little bit. But and it takes time to get them when they're young to come up and go on the stand to be milked and to learn the routine of, they get fed on that stand. And that's a big incentive. And, so it doesn't usually take them very long to learn that when they come out and they're coming up, that is what they're going to do. They're going to come up and eat, and then they'll get milked, and then they go back, and, they're fed again, of course. Or like in the summer, they're outside. But in the winter, they do go out, but Goats do not like to be in the snow. They don't like the rain. They don't like to get their feet wet. The cows and the sheep, they don't care. Makes no difference. Jen. I like jerseys. I like jerseys better than anything.
Why is that?
They're a smaller cow. They don't eat quite as much. They have a lot more butter fat in their milk. And most of them have a much better disposition.
Are these Jersey cows that you have in here?
Yes.
Are you still going to let me watch you make cheese this year?
The only problem is the state inspectors won't allow it, or the government. If we make cheese when you are here, we have to either give it all away or throw it all away. We ran into that when we used to teach cheese making, because my friend that taught me to make cheese from England, she would come back and we would do it every year in the spring of the year for 5-6 weeks. And well, we used to have them bring their own containers and whatever cheese they made, they could take home with them. And we'd tell them what to do with it and all that, so that then they would have it. But if we do that now, they said, I just checked with him again last week, and he said, no, he says, if you do that, you either got to give it all away, throw it all away, or use it yourself right away.
Can you briefly tell me the process of making cheese?
Yeah.
How does it go?
Yeah.
You start with the milk from the goats.
Or the cows.
Or the cows.
Whichever one you're making.
Uh-huh.
And then you have to heat it to at least 86, 88 degrees. And then you set it. You have a rennet and a culture that you use. It's culture first and then the rennet. And you have to mix them well together and everything. And then it has to set for at least an hour. Just, you don't touch it at all. And then after that, you have to cut it all. And it ends up being in like little 1-inch square pieces. And, you mix it, stir it up well and everything else, and just let it set in between and do it several times of stirring.
Can you show me the room where you make the cheese?
Yes.
Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay.
Right in.
Oh, this is interesting, Joan.
Yeah, this is the press.
Uh-huh.
And when the molds are full, let me grab one of the molds over here. See, this is what the cheese is put into.
Uh-huh.
They have a liner, and there's a thing itself, and then the top has a netting on that as well. And then after the curds all go in where you want them, this goes on top of it. It's called a follower. And then you put them underneath the press here, and you let that down on, I can do that.
Okay.
See, that's how it sets. And then as it presses, because usually the follower sets up about that far on top of the cheese above it, above the mold itself. And then when they start pressing down, you just raise these and keep adding weight to them. Put them up wherever you want them.
So, what is the purpose of that? To press the moisture out?
Yes, to push the whey out of them. And that's why you have to turn them in here every single day, a couple times a day at least. And the first couple of days, if you can do them 3 or 4 times, you're even better. And then, these are the weights that we put on them. And they're, they're heavy. They're not, I don't know if you want to lift one.
Yeah, that's pretty heavy.
Yeah, they are. They are. And we'll end up sometimes with, 6 or 8 on a thing here. from the pulling.
And when you sell milk, you sell the raw milk?
I sell raw milk, goat's milk or cow's milk. I have the license for both.
Uh-huh.
And,
Why do people prefer raw milk?
well, the raw milk has all of the bacteria and the enzymes and everything in it that really your body needs. But if you've never had it, you have to be very, very careful with it, because it will upset your stomach if you eat or drink a lot of it. If you're going to drink it, you drink a little at a time and work yourself up. But that's all I've ever had in my whole life.
Raw milk.
Raw milk.
Well, you
I was
see.
raised on raw milk, which, yes, now goat's milk is what people are looking for babies and children.
Really?
And I mean, there's a lot of people that are allergic to cow's milk. It is too rich, because the goat milk really doesn't have any cream on it. It's a naturally homogenized milk. And that's, and the globules and that are much easier to digest than in cow's milk.
Interesting. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot to it. There's a lot to it.
Yeah.
This is the room where the cheese goes to age. There isn't much in here right now for cheese, because we've got to start making some more now. We haven't done it all summer because we were hay. And then here's some of the jams and jellies here, and then there's more over here that we're still working on. Pickles. There's bread and butter. There's sweet squash. Dilly beans. Applesauce. That I gotta make more of if I can get apples. And then we still have more jellies to make. There's all kind. And then there's jalapeno jelly there. And there's cranberry chutney. And this is the sweet cucumber relish. Oh, and salsa. Salsa here.
Aha. Now this cheese has a yellowish color to it.
That's cream wax.
Cream wax.
Yeah.
That's and you just smear that on the cheese?
Yeah, I have a paint. It is a paintbrush, but it's a very fine paintbrush. And you take it and you put that on them and let it dry. And if there's any cracks in them or anything, which you can see this one did have, you try to fill them in. And then it seals it up, and they're fine. And they'll last, forever. And then when we cut them, they're in packages like this.
Twin Oaks was kind of a famous view off of Route 41, and one of the trees blew over. But this was the first of the Twin Oak projects. But this is all the small stuff from the same tree. Things like this are sisters. They all came one after another down a slab, which is kind of fun. So they relate. They're all different. And it gets down to... So I try to get everything I can out of the pieces because they're precious. And I had quite a bit of it, but a lot of it cracks. Things like this, which I don't mind. It kind of adds to the piece. None of these are meant to hold liquid. And then some bark edge pieces. Beautiful grain. Just really wild when you get around the... I'll show you some of the scabs outside. Or scars. I hate that term, scab. But even things like that, it's just fun. And the tightness of the grain, I don't know if you can see it. It grew really slow. Except around damage. And then you got some really wild, some of these, the grain is about a quarter, like that one. The grain is really wide. So this was around some kind of a wound or something, so the tree was putting on wood there, where on the branches they were just growing really, really slow. But a 250-year-old tree back in colonial times was a youngster. So we have to remember that, you know, even though it's 250 years old, it's not ancient. It fell down because it was spread out too much. If it had been in a forest, it would have been a column. I mean, originally, I think they were like 300 to 600 years, most of the trees in New England. That was before the earthworms came. So, well, let's go outside and see if we can find this block.
Okay.
I haven't dug it out yet. It's been in storage all winter, and I've looked at it, but I'm dying to look at it. After I talked to you last night, I kept peeking at it. I said, no, we're going to dig it out while Eric's here. So, and I don't really know what I'm going to do with it, so let's go find out. It'll be fun. This is the one I think I'm going to use. Well, that sort of looks like a bowl. Gotta leave the horns on it or not? Oh, good. Oh, I'm in luck. Oh, that never happens. Or almost never. I don't want to screw up the texture on this. Oh, that is so nice. Firewood. Burned a lot of bark this winter. Doesn't look like it's got any problems at all. It's kind of a weird shape, but I really don't want to make it. Cut these off. It's not nearly as impressive. But is it useful? Not really. I suppose it would be. It's a big salad bowl or something. Like this one. That is kind of a nice feature. Put this all off and save that. hemming and hawing can keep you from doing something, so you have to be ruthless sometimes and just say, it's not that precious. Not that I'm lazy. Isn't that pretty?
Yeah.
And there's some insect tunnel, but it didn't go in. Changes the color of wood too. You can make cherry look very old with lye. Goes from pink to burgundy.
This is lye to kill the insects?
No, it's to soften the last of the little bark fibers. What lye does to your skin? Probably not good things. It eats up paintbrushes. It can't be good for your hands. This piece is going to take a while. I should put this on the table saw, see how it sits. Keep my fingers crossed. I put this guard on. Normally you'd only have the metal one, but it would be over here. Well, no, it would be kind of off to the side. So you're always cutting kind of on the tip or off to the side. And your fingers are right next to that blade all the time. And so I put this on first, which helps you control the depth of cut. You can kind of lean down on it. And then I used it for a couple bowls and put it away for 10 years because I was scared to death of it. And then I needed to do another bowl, so I figured out how to put this on. And now I can't, you'd have to stick your hand right in there. I feel very safe. And this keeps the chips from wearing your skin off.
Yeah.
Amazing little tool.
What's it called?
I think it's a Lancelot. It's made by King Arthur Tools. And replacement blades. I've got to get a blade. I'm wearing this one out. But it's made, oh God, 25 big bowls. amazing grain patterns coming through here. Unfortunately, I'll probably cut them all away. These kind of stains are really fun. You never know what will be when you get to the finished thing, but in here that's going to be really pretty. I think that'll go all the way through. This is how I used to do it. That's a lot of work. You can feel the wood better through a straight tool than you can a rotary thing, but you still sort of, it's not the same. I mean, it's nice to be able to touch, and you get a nice tactile sense through tools, but it's so darn slow. That was about the same amount of time to get that one stripe out of there, you know, it's amazing. Arm's getting tired. I've been standing here for the last 10 minutes kind of figuring out what needs doing and where not to go. It's a bad spot right here. It's only got almost a half an inch thick, and it's a bump. So to get a nice smooth curve, I can still do that, but these are heavy in here, so I don't really want to bump in the middle of the thing. I want a nice curve, but maybe it'll happen. Yeah, you were asking, do I have a preconceived notion? Sometimes. But with a piece like this, no. It kind of did have a flowing shape, and I didn't change it too much, but it is what it is, and I'm just trying to find something graceful out of it. So I didn't really change it that much. Tweak a curve here, tweak a curve there, but it's basically the overall shape, and a lot of the original cambium is still there. So it's basically the piece made itself, and I'm just kind of trying to find a little more grace. Stop and sharpen bits. myself good enough. I was 4 years old when my dad gave me a pearl-handled jackknife, and that's when it started. He gave me a little bit of instructions and let me go. Came running out because I was trying to drill a hole with it, and explained how it would close up on my hand, and then pretty much I was free with it, and I started whittling all kinds of things. And when I was 5, my mother convinced him I should have a hatchet because I was out helping him clear brush, and I wanted a hatchet in the worst way. And he didn't think it was a good idea, but she said, let him go. And so at that point I started cutting down, we had about 2.5 acres, I started cutting down the birch forest to make a log cabin. And I was probably about 7 then. My dad always had wood around, and he was real free with it, as long as you had an idea. Couldn't just have all those boards, but if you had something you wanted to build, sure, go for it. And tools. Minor instructions. Mostly, watch me do this and you'll learn how, and it's a lot sunk in. Then one of my sisters married a guy that worked at Ovation Instruments, and wasn't really a luthier, but knew a lot and had done a lot of instrument work. And he really turned me on to smooth curves and flowing lines and rhythm. And then Bob Green, he was a guy I worked with for quite a while. He was the power tool man, really. First time I ran a thickness planer, that thing over there, to plane boards, I was trying to feed it from the outfeed. I didn't know anything about it. So he kind of opened my eyes to all the faster ways to do everything. I was a hand tool man all through my teen years. I had a small shop in Lime Rock, and just a workbench, a vise, no table saw. My bandsaw was a hatchet. Actually the same one that my dad got me, or gave me way back when. I didn't even care that it was a Girl Scout hatchet, it was mine. It was great. And then from Bob Green, I met Sandra Boynton, and she's a designer. I collaborated with her on a lot of projects, doing rooms, built-ins. She taught me a lot about attention to detail. Small, little, subtle things make a big difference. And then from there, Don Gummer, sculptor, started building his wall pieces. And that kind of fine-tuned my basic joinery skills, because his pieces are really complicated and have to line up. And some of them, they were all angular, and you could be off by a 16th and nobody'd know the difference, but other ones, so. And here I am now, finally doing this full-time, just scraping by, but I love it, so I don't have to go to work ever. Not making a lot of money, but life's too short to do something you don't like to do. And I'm having way too much fun with these.
So I'll follow you inside and we can
All right.
start.
Okay. All right. Well, this is my little studio. It was a rental cottage I had for 30 years with tenants. And when the last fellow moved out, I decided to take it over for myself as a studio gallery. All right. Well, come on in and see what you think here. Watch your step.
Okay.
When I have students at my studio for lessons, most of the times I'll start them off on these onions. These are prints of my paintings that have sold. They're prints. That's just exactly the way the paintings looked. And these are the subjects I have them start on, complete beginners, because they're fairly simple. It's a sphere, and yet it's got a lot of color, a lot of shaping in it, but it's still pretty simple. Well, I moved here from New York in 1980, and I was a carpenter. I was always a carpenter. I started as a carpenter in 1960. And in 1989, things got bad financially around here for everyone. Carpenters were out of work. It's kind of like now. It's gone full circle again. So I started to paint and see if I could maybe sell some of them. And it was working pretty good from 1989 right through the 90s. And I was selling at a pretty good rate. I was thinking about hey, maybe I can do this full time and give up the carpentry work, which is hard. Took a number on my hands and my legs, but 48 years as a carpenter, but I don't regret it. Since I started really painting in 1989, prior to that it was a hobby, I just did a few paintings, I sold over 200 works, and I stopped counting. And these were legitimate paintings. These weren't the prints I make up. I don't even count them, the prints from a painting. And that's a lot of paintings. You know, and Van Gogh did one. I think he sold one before he cut off his ear. So I guess you could say I've had success. I'll show you this one of the hunting dogs I did in 1960. It was from a magazine ad right here. The second oil painting I ever did. Didn't know a thing about painting. Just bought some inexpensive oil colors. And this is just a simple panel. And there's the date, February 60. I even put the month. That's the second oil painting I did. So I had a talent. And this, look at this one. Look at that there, 1966. That's the Curry Sock boat. And it was in a magazine. And there was a big old bottle of Curry Sock scotch here, I guess. So I copied that out of a magazine. And that is a vintage painting. 1966. My kids play tic-tac-toe on the back of it. So these few paintings I've got as mementos of that I've been doing this a long time. And that's a pretty nice drawing. There's nothing shabby about that. And that was a good many years ago, 66, and this is 2014, so how many is that? It's a lot. Yeah, and that's probably the fourth or fifth painting, because I didn't do many in those days. But it was in my blood, I guess you could say. But never dreamed I'd be a pro trying to sell them. So it worked out pretty neat. There's one I did 1967. You can look around and see what I do. I'm very fond of wildlife, and of course landscapes has always been my favorite.
So where did you learn painting?
Self-taught.
Self?
When I started
It's
to really,
amazing.
I was in New York. I was in a nice section of the Bronx, the Northeast Bronx, Baychester Avenue. It was beautiful. It was farmland. And I went to high school down in Manhattan, took the subway there. Subway was only a quarter. Actually, it was 15 cents when I first started going in 1950. And I went down to the city and I discovered the Metropolitan Museum of Art. My school was at 59th Street and the Metropolitan is up 79th or 81st, I think. And I used to go there, and in those days it was free and there were very few guards walking around. It was nice, it was beautiful. So I just fell in love with art, and I was amazed. So then I got some paints, and I don't remember the first one. I know this was the second one. But there was basically no instruction, but at that time there was a series done by a fellow called Campana. D.M. Campana, and he had these little booklets, and he was during the 20s and 30s. That's when he was published, and he was a professional painter, and I learned quite a few basic tricks from those little pocket books. Other than that, I never studied anyway. But I had the love of art. Drawing I could always do.
As a child?
Yeah. When I was in grammar school, the teacher would always have me draw things on the chalkboard. When it was Christmas time, draw Santa Claus or whatever. So it was just a natural thing. God gave me a natural talent for art. And color came along, and I just instinctively knew the right colors. I'm a colorist. I'm what they call a tonalist painter, where I use a lot of dark shadows, whereas many painters will keep their colors very bright and very light. I still like shadows.
John, how would you describe the feeling that you have when you're actually doing a painting?
Well, sometimes it's frustrating, and I don't like frustrating, but I also come to realize that if I stick with it and just give it a little more time, eventually, most of the time, it will evolve into something not too bad. I used to kind of give up pretty soon when it's just not working, and I would take a rag and wipe it off. But after a while, I realized, just give it a little more time, a little more time. I was doing a portrait of one of my daughters years ago, Jenny, and it just wasn't working. And I try hard. When I paint, I give it my all. This was in the studio. It was from a photograph. And I'm painting her, and I'm looking. So I just fiddled a little bit more, just a little more. And I looked, and I says, that's Jenny. Just like that. She came right out. So all that to say is don't give up and don't quit on a painting unless you know it's really, which happens, it's really lost. And then you simply clean it off and save that canvas for another time. Everyone says about my work they love how I capture light. And as far as I'm concerned, painting is all about light. If you can capture light,
Light.
sunlight, to look like real dramatic, like, but you know, sometimes there are paintings that men can do in a rainy day, just as beautiful. But I appreciate light, like this barn here with the shadows going on the snow. And everyone says, they always say the same thing, you capture the light, you capture the light. And that's what I try to do. I'm a traditionalist painter, and it has always been that oil paintings, they're usually done on canvas. A lot of people do them on masonite now. But in either way, when a painting is dry, depending on how much thickness of pigment, how much thickness of paint you put on, it takes a long time to dry. It dries by oxidation, not by evaporation, so it soaks up oxygen, and that paint film takes, if it's a moderate thickness, it'll take about a full year before it's totally dry. And if you put this protective varnish on, it's called damar. It's made from a tree. It's one of the pine trees, but it's a South American tree, I think. It's called damar. If you put it on prematurely and the painting's not totally dry, it'll mix with the painting, with the pigment. And these varnishes do get dirty over time. That's the idea. They protect the painting, and they'll get a little yellowish and brown, which is, you know, normal. Well, we're talking like 50 years. And if it was applied when the painting was dry, you simply take turpentine, which was the original cleaner, which is pretty potent stuff, and you wipe that varnish right off, and you're right back to a brand new, clean painting, and then you revarnish it again for the next 50 years. But if you do it too soon, you're liable to wipe off some of the damn paint, and that's not good. I have watercolors in the bins there that are not framed. And sometimes people buy an unframed watercolor. Some people say that they can make almost anyone to become an artist, but I don't really think that's true. I think you have to be born with a certain amount of inherent talent, and there are some that are a little bit talented and they can improve, but some people, it's not in them. But we're all individuals, you know. A person can't be a painter, but he can maybe play music or something else. 'Cause we all have our own gifts. And I was, from the beginning, I could draw, no trouble, it just came natural, and color came natural. That's a western bluebird, it was called, and he's sitting in lilacs.
And that's what you're going to paint today.
That's what I'm going to try to paint.
Okay.
I'll start right in with the basic shape of the bird himself, and try to draw with the brush. It's the same size. I use a fairly large brush to start out with. And we want to try to get a pretty good outline of the bird right off the bat. Paint's very thin. And we're not thinking much about details now. And later we'll come all the tickling, I call it.
Yeah.
That's my word for the final details. We're looking for the right placement now. We want to make sure the bird is in the right place and the proportions are pretty correct. And I use one brush at a time and constantly clean out a color. Some artists will have a fistful of brushes, but if you clean out your one brush and just wipe it with a paper towel, you can get away with it. Very few brushes. Let's try to get that little breast in there a little bit. And that beautiful rust color, whether it's a male or a female, I'm going to try some burnt sienna. Maybe a little orange. I like doing birds. It's a good idea to try to cover as much of your panel or canvas at one time. It all works together as a unit. I love oil painting. You can go back to it the next day. It's still fresh enough to continue on, but then you should let it dry because it's starting to set up and you don't want to mess with it once it does that. But you can actually go back the very next day and continue on, which you can't do with acrylics or, well, watercolors dry right away too, but you lose your ability to blend. So oil colors are just, for me, they're the best. They always work. Now, you have to always go back and put in the final details after the painting is pretty well dried. So we're just going to get a good suggestion of all this today, because you really can't get in all these beautiful clean whites that these lilacs have.
Right.
But we're just laying the ground of what it's going to be, and I know what it'll be later on. But at this time it may not look the way it is really supposed to look. White is one color you buy. This tube used to be 6 inches long. That's one tube you always buy in a large size because that's your light. Every color gets lightened with white, and it's the one color you use more than others. And you always buy large tubes of it. That's titanium white. That's the most popular one now, but there's several kinds of white. Got a little purple in there too, if I catch it. That's a nice color, you know, purple.
Yeah.
People love their purple. I do. I love it. So we have it established. Now we're going to start carving it up. Now I'm going to switch to a finer brush. And for detailing, I like to use red sables. It's softer and nicer. And here's a gadget. It's called a malh stick, M-A-L-H. I don't know why, but that's what they've always called it. And it has a cushioned end on it, and you can put it against either the edge of your canvas, or if it's got a nice big round soft bulb of leather, you could put it right on there, and it won't disturb the painting, and it gives you a rest for your hand. Because I have a lot of coffee, and my hand wouldn't be too steady by itself. So I need to use a rest. And that's what artists use all the time, malh stick. I'm a lefty, so it goes on the left side there. And now let's see, we're going to start working on this bird a little bit here. See what we can do. Try to establish his wing. Always on the wings or under any objects, there's always a dark edge because that's in shadow. And that's what establishes the lower part of whatever it is the light is hitting. You need that shadow, and there's one up in here, and these are the individual feathers. Now we're going to try to right there. Now that nice little fluffy stuff on the bottom. And here. The head has a lot of light hitting it, so that's how we're going to do it. Very good bit of sunlight hitting the head. Okay, and now that beak. This might be a little too big for the beak. There's his eye. Okay. A little bit here. Okay. That I tell my students never to do, because the paint has a lot of toxic materials in it. But your fingertip is an incredibly delicate tool that can move paint around in ways that a brush can't really do well. The little spot of white brings it to life. Painting is nothing but contrast. It's a dark color and tone against a light tone and color, and vice versa. And it's what brings things into the illusion of reality, because it's all fakery, you know. I'm doing this all with mirrors. It's not real. But that's it. Contrast. Constantly making contrasts. You need a light to show up a dark, and you need a dark to show up a light. I'll show you another handy brush. It's called a fan blender, and this one's made out of badger hair, which is the very best. And a lot of guys, a lot of artists will use that to actually paint with. I only use it as a very subtle, soft blender to pull one color into another and just very subtly pull them all together. And there's no real paint on there, it's just gently moving around the paints I have on there already. That's very handy to know. Okay. A good bit of light right at the top of the head. So we're going to try to get that. Because it needs that to stand out. It needs the contrast. That's better. And right over the eye too. And pull it down a little. Okay. Get a little blue in there, just to let them know it's got blue on the head. But it created the contrast so it stands out. Now I see some really nice darks in that foliage, if I could get that. Let's see, we're going to try ultramarine blue, which is a nice dark blue, a little bit of red cad. That's making for a nice dark color, and maybe add a little of that green in there too. Let's see if we can hit a couple. I see some really nice, it makes the leaves look like some real depths to them. The underside of a leaf is always dark. And if you can do a few here and there, it should help. But you see how I got the subject in right away with no drawing?
Yeah.
And I roughed in the subject, and then it's important to cover the whole panel or the whole canvas and not leave lots of blank areas, because they all work together. They all reinforce each other, and you need the colors around the background to help the subject. And you just keep bringing it in as a unit. We're born with gifts. God gave me the gift to paint beautiful pictures. People have told me when they bought my paintings, it touched their soul. Really? I mean, they said, you have no idea what that work of art did to me. When I look at it, it just does something to your inner man, and that's kind of nice to hear that, you know?